It's time to accelerate. Hey friends, this is Andy. Welcome to episode 646 of Accelerate, the sales podcast of record. I am honored to be joined on the show today by my guest, Godard Abel. Godard is a very successful serial entrepreneur and currently co-founder and CEO of G2 Crowd. And today we're going to talk about Godard's story as an entrepreneur growing multiple successful startups. We're also going to dig into how Godard establishes authentic connections with other people. You know, people may claim that no one talks on the phone, but Godard shares his view of why the phone is really his best tool, if not the best tool, for having the quality conversations that lead to developing the quality relationships that you need in your business, whether it's sales or any other sort of strategic relationship that you are developing. And based on his experiences, he has some great advice for startups and small businesses looking to sell into the enterprise. So make sure you stick around and check that out. If you'd like to see show notes for this episode, go to andypaul.com/646. As always, we provide a breakdown of this and all conversations on Accelerate. Make sure you can check out that at andypaul.com/643. Now, friends, let me say that I often hear from listeners who are looking for a new sales challenge, and I tell them that one of the most important elements to career success is making sure to align yourself with the right company, one that develops its employees, values their customers, and has a portfolio of category-leading products that can compete with anyone in the market. And with its recent acquisition of Level 3, the new CenturyLink has become a world leader in providing those types of services: cloud, security, real-time communications, and managed services. So if you're a top sales producer and you're looking to challenge yourself in order to take your career to the next level, then visit CenturyLink.com/accelerate. Join their talent community, see if CenturyLink is the right step for you and your career. And lastly, before I talk with Godard, let me share with you that the second edition of the Sales Leadership Accelerated Mastermind for SaaS sales leaders kicks off on April 24th. This is an event that I partner with Jocko van der Kooi, founder of Winning by Design, to put on. We call it SaaS Slam for short. And SaaS Slam is limited. Participation in SaaS Slam is limited to founders, CEOs, CROs, and VPs of sales of high-growth SaaS startups only. And we call it Accelerated Mastermind because in just 2 days, you're going to become better prepared to transform how you sell, how you scale, and how you develop the capabilities of your team to crush your goals. So for more information and to apply for your place at SaaS Slam, go to www.saaslam.com/event1, the number one. That's www.saasslam.com/event1. All right, let's get to it with Godard. Godard, welcome to Accelerate.
Thanks, Andy.
So a question for you. I ask standard question. I ask all my guests at the start of the show, and that is, in your opinion, what's the single biggest challenge facing sales reps today?
I think it's breaking through the noise. And there are just so many technologies and vendors out there. And I used to work at Salesforce. And for example, on the App Exchange now, I think there's about 5,000 products.
Right.
So 5,000 different sales technologies being pitched to Salesforce and CRM customers every day. And breaking through that noise is pretty daunting.
So what's the recommendations for how you do that?
I think what works best is true personalization. And like a lot of executives, I probably every day get hundreds of pings, old emails or sales reps trying to get my attention. And I think most of them are not personalized. And I think that's the downside. And there are great tools out there, things like SalesLoft or Salesforce, where people have templates and they're just pinging hundreds of people at once. But I think it tends to just get deleted. Whereas the people that really personalize their message have, a personal connection, have someone that I know via LinkedIn connect me, or really think about something they've seen about G2 Crowd and truly put it in my context, how their solution can add value for me. I think those are the messages that stand out. But I'm actually amazed at how few, salespeople do that take the time to truly personalize the message.
Well, one of the things that those platforms talk about is this idea of, which I don't believe in personally, is mass personalization at scale. And it's like, I don't think that exists, right?
I agree. I think you can actually feel it. It's somewhat spiritual. If you're authentically actually thinking about the other person and connecting to them, even when you don't know them yet, it comes through in what you write what your message is. And the other thing I often say to people, I was at Salesforce after my Steelbrick was acquired by Salesforce. Internal training for a bunch of their sales executives at Salesforce. One of the things I said to them is, hey, pick up the phone. Because one thing I've noticed, since I started working 20 years ago, frankly, my phone rings less and less. And everyone is trying to do this digital, hyper-personalized, but I actually rarely get a phone call. And I would say the same thing, right? If you call me, A, I'm likely to answer, and then B, you have to be prepared to have a very, authentic, personalized conversation. And but I also see very few people doing that.
Yeah, I use the term when it comes to emails is you have to humanize them and distinguish, because everybody's taken personalization really to mean it's like, hey, let's just slap somebody's first name in a mail merge, and that's personalization. But you have to show something deeper than that, something that truly is personal and shows a little bit of your humanity, as you talk about, in an authentic way.
Yes. And then I think we can all feel it. We can all feel authenticity. And I have 3 kids, and kids are amazing at this. But Then I think somehow we lose it as we get older.
Well, interesting what you said about the phone, too, because I think that it's become this group think. The accepted thing is, well, hey, I can never reach anybody on the phone. It's become so hard. And you're talking about, CEO of now multiple companies phone's a good way to reach me if you're prepared.
Right. And frankly, it rings less and less over the years, because even internally we use Slack,
right?
We use email, right? But I do think the default for the younger generation is more digital. And yes, in theory, it's more efficient. But I also find, myself, when I'm selling or I'm trying to negotiate, I always, once it gets real, I always prefer to do it by voice and actually minimize any written, because I think to really build a relationship, come to an agreement with another human being, there's nothing like talking to them.
Well, and so let's dig into that for a second, because that is certainly the trend in sales these days with, SDRs, and certainly at least in the tech space, but it's going in other spaces as well, is more sort of this mass approach, less personalized, where it seems we're setting people up where we sort of set up in such a way it's hard to build those relationships. I mean, because, hey, we have an SDR, my job is just to pass you on to somebody else.
Right. Now, I think we're choosing, in general, as an industry, we're choosing quantity over quality. And I do think that's a big opportunity to do quality. And even when I think about it, like most people, I feel rushed a lot of days. And I do actually do a lot of what I will call random networking. Mm-hmm. Like last week, I was at SaaStr, right, and I meet a lot of entrepreneurs, but I actually really enjoy it. And sometimes it's hard to justify, because like everyone else, my inbox is overflowing, and I have 100 things I feel like are creating anxiety for me and I should be responding to. But then, on the flip side, if I really have, every day, let's just say I have 2 authentic coffee lunch meetings with another human being, and I spend an hour genuinely, authentically interacting with them, now I've got, a relationship for life. And it's also, I think, the joy of my work is getting to know people. Mm-hmm. But it's also highly effective. And if you do it for many years now, I've been doing it for 20 years in this industry, then all of a sudden, when I go to an event like SaaStr or like Dreamforce, I feel like it's like a college reunion where I'm meeting, kind of hundreds of old friends, and which I think makes my work enjoyable, but it also becomes very effective, because now, my sales team, almost any account they want to get into at G2 Crowd, I tend to genuinely know someone. And, and then because we do know each other, because we do have a trusted relationship, it's much easier. I can do that very personalized outreach.
Right.
And, then we can get in front of them. And if our solution, G2 Crowd, adds a lot of value for them, they're much more likely to engage with us.
So for listeners who maybe know the name G2 Crowd but aren't familiar with what it does, tell the audience what G2 Crowd does.
Yeah, and G2 Crowd, we're a review platform for business technology, so for all types of enterprise software and services. And we really started the company because we wanted to create something to scratch our own itch. And I'd always been an enterprise software entrepreneur. So my first company, Big Machines, which is now part of Oracle, but we were building CPQ software. One of my big challenges as an entrepreneur at the beginning was, how do I get third-party validation? Mm-hmm. We thought we had a great product and we had a great vision, but really at the beginning, the problem you have when you're a startup, really no one gives a shit.
Right.
And that's kind of that noise thing I talked about. There's thousands of companies being started every day, and why should they care about you? So we were desperate for third-party validation. And back in the early 2000s, really the only thing that was out there were analysts like Gartner and Forrester that would give you that third-party validation. But I remember with big machines, it took me 9 years just to get in the Gartner report. And, and eventually, I think after 12 years, they called us a leader. But I was always frustrated. It seemed to be a very lagging indicator. And in our consumer lives, in the meantime, when we started G2 Crowd in 2012, really personally, I was buying everything on Amazon, and I would always use the reviews to help me make a quick buying decision. And there were also tools like Yelp or in our World Glassdoor, recruiting. They had a vision. Would be amazing if our customers had the same kind of resource. And when they were looking to buy our software, if they could read real peer reviews. And we looked around in 2012, we didn't think there was any website out there doing a good job of that. And so we really wanted to bring that consumer review, that peer advice model to our industry. But I think one of the things we decided to do differently was to make it all based on real people. So we used LinkedIn identity from the beginning. And LinkedIn, we knew in our industry, it really is becoming everyone's professional identity, so it can be trusted. Right. You can see if they're real people. You can see if you're connected to them. And we thought that knowing who wrote the review was really the thing that was going to make you trust it. And today on G2 Crowd, we have features. You can filter reviews by your first-degree LinkedIn connections. So you can actually find people trusted peers in the industry who use these products, see what they wrote about them. And that, we think, is really what gives you that trust and comfort and allows you to make technology buying decisions much more quickly. And the other good we think it does for the industry, it gives the customers a bigger voice, because I, as an entrepreneur, then I no longer have to talk to analysts. I can just make sure my customers are happy. I can take their feedback to heart. And there's amazing entrepreneurs now, like Eric Yuan from Zoom, for example. He's the founder and CEO of Zoom. And Zoom has been, and we use their tool. His slogan is delivering happiness. And I think for most of us, web meetings have been anything but happy. Right. And I think we've all experienced waiting 5 or 10 minutes. Oh, can I get on? How to get the monitor turned on? Audio's not working. And really what Eric and Zoom have done, they've taken away all that pain. And now, typically with one click, you're in your meeting. And he also does a lot of work to make sure the voice and the video quality that Zoom delivers are truly the best in the industry. But he also loves a platform like G2 Crowd, because he's encouraged his customers when they log out of meetings to write reviews. He has well over 2,000 reviews now, and he has the highest satisfaction rating based on those G2 Crowd user reviews. And now it's part of also their message to the market is, hey, we do truly deliver happiness, but don't believe me. Look, thousands of customers have validated my success and happiness. And so I think that's what really makes me excited is that we are allowing, entrepreneurs like Eric and emerging technologies like Zoom that truly deliver better customer experiences. We're allowing them to win faster in the marketplace and really helping buyers, figure out, hey, which of these. And in web conferencing, for example, there are hundreds of different technologies. So as a buyer, it's kind of daunting, which one do I pick? But now G2 Crowd just makes it much easier to, kind of quickly, based on peer reviews, find the right technology.
Right. So if you're looking for information about a product or service, then the service is free, but then the vendors pay to get listed.
Actually, it's a freemium model because like I said, I've always been that bootstrap entrepreneur. Sure. So I didn't want it to cost any money. I wanted it to be real time. So you can start for free. And there's actually a link on the bottom of the G2 Crowd website. So if you're an entrepreneur starting out, you can list your product. As soon as you have some customers, you might as well list it for free. You can encourage your customers to write some authentic reviews. And again, none of that costs you money. You can get into our ratings. We call them grids. And it's a real-time version of something like a Magic Quadrant, except it's all crowdsourced data. And so you can get validation, third-party validation for free. And then, there is a way that we do offer, we call marketing solutions. So if you do want to upgrade it, that's a bit like Glassdoor's model, where you're listed, companies are just listed there. It doesn't cost you anything, and you get reviews from your employees. But then if you want to engage all the prospective employees, then you can pay Glassdoor for advertising, et cetera. Mm-hmm. G2 Crowd is somewhat similar, where we offer premium listings where you can then embed your own demo videos, your own marketing content, so you can engage some of those buyers straight from G2 Crowd. And I think even more interesting, part of our marketing solution are analytics. So then we can also show you, how's your profile doing, which buyers, which companies are investigating your product, who are they comparing you to? And that's really all part of this trend of account-based marketing, where you do get digital signals then from G2 Crowd. Hey, these companies in your target account list, today they just spent 2 hours reading your reviews. They're comparing you to your competitor. And knowing that in real time is very valuable to a marketer and to the salesperson, because now is probably a good time to pick up the phone and call that account, because they're now they're in an active buying cycle.
So what's the vision beyond software? I mean, I know there's some service providers that are on there now. What do you see as sort of the larger vision for G2 Crowd?
And we do want to stay focused on, what I would call business technology and related services, because it's just such a huge world. And we really just want to provide the best peer reviews and advice in that industry. And to quote Gartner, and maybe somewhat ironically, but I think they say it's a $4 trillion industry, business technology, and it's growing. And frankly, even Gartner's doing quite well. I think they have like a $13 billion market cap. They're growing. Right, and I think it's just a result. And everyone says it now. I think I love Mark Andreessen's quote, software's eating the world. Right. And I think for any business now, digital transformation is so imperative. Even if you're running a restaurant, right, and you don't have the right technology, you don't use Yelp and OpenTable the right way, it really jeopardizes your existence. And that's true in every industry. And so we also think, as an entrepreneur, as a business builder, I want, my brethren across industries to have great technology advice because it is truly mission critical. And so we think there's more than enough to do. And we did also raise a bunch of capital last year. Excel, a leading VC firm that also invested in Facebook and Slack, et cetera. They invested over $20 million in our company, and LinkedIn also invested as part of the product partnership. And I mentioned earlier, the LinkedIn identity is so crucial to creating trust in our reviews. So it kind of grew out of that partnership. But that does, so I think also these investors are betting, this is a massive industry. And if we can really be the best source of genuine peer reviews, peer advice, and influence $4 trillion of spend, that we can also build a nice business.
Yeah, and I think that and not to throw shade on Gartner, but I sense there's always a little bit of skepticism about some of the Magic Quadrant research because people pay Gartner. Those same companies are paying Gartner a fair amount of money, and I don't know if they're concerned about the objectivity, I guess. And then if you have purely a peer review system, then you don't have those concerns.
Yeah, no, and I certainly experienced that. I remember at Big Machines at the end, we were spending $70,000-$80,000 a year, to get access to the analysts. And right. But then the other problem, even if the analyst is totally unbiased, they can only cover so many companies because it's a human model. They always put some criteria on it. I remember in CPQ, you had to have at least 20 million in revenue, and they'll only cover, let's say, 10 vendors. And it's just because if you're a human being doing the research, kind of primary research, frankly, you can only talk to so many vendors. Whereas, the beauty of the crowdsourced model, like you look at our CRM category on G2 Crowd, we have hundreds of products. And again, it's freemium. So, a lot of them are small entrepreneurs just starting for free. But as soon as they have 10 customer reviews, they're included in our ratings, for free. And it's real time. As soon as you get that 10th review, you're in our ratings, you're in the game. And so I think that's the biggest thing. I think it's just a modern real time model. And really, if you look at all kinds of online publishing, really almost every sector has gone to this model, right? And I think that the notion of kind of this legacy publishing model of an expert doing primary research and publishing a report every 2 or 3 years, it's just not, it can't keep up with the real-time nature of enterprise technology. And as you know, I think, marketing technology, for example, there's the MarTech 5000, and every day there's new vendors, new technologies, new things popping up. And so we just think, really the crowdsourced model is really the only way to keep up with that and actually make sure the buyers have access to all the products, all the technologies, and have access to them in real time. They don't have to wait multiple years until an analyst starts covering them. Yeah,
well, very interesting. Yeah, for listeners, if you're considering purchases and you're not, business technology, you're not looking at G2 Crowd, you should. I like just going and that's when every time I hear about a new company, the first place I go to look at it and investigate actually is G2 Crowd.
Thanks for doing that. And it is free. It's the beauty of it for the buyer.
Yeah.
You can get insights, for free. And we do hope more and more buyers discover it. And frankly, Andy, if you see a vendor that's not on there yet, like I said, you can send them a note suggesting a list of product. They can get started for free. Or I'm always happy to help them as well. And we do want them all to get started. And like I said, we don't care. And the number one rated product on our G2 Crowd platform right now is Slack. And frankly, Slack has never spent a penny with us. But we just put out our top 100 rating. They were number one. And it's because in Slack, it's not a secret anymore, right? But they also on our platform, they have over 10,000 great customer reviews, and users tend to just love their app.
Right.
And those are the kinds of vendors we're going to highlight, whether they spend money with us or not.
Okay. Well, another topic I want to talk to you about today is, given your experience building, 3 companies now, and certainly one of them, Big Machines, we talked about before, was targeted at the enterprise. Is a lot of listeners in the audience are small, mid-sized enterprises looking at going up market with the products they sell, selling to the somewhat of a complex solution to the enterprises. Yeah, I'm sure they appreciate learning more about how you sort of organized a new company from the beginning to do that, because oftentimes they sort of think, well, we need to grow before we can tackle selling to the large enterprise. And I know I worked for a number of startups where, we started off selling to the large enterprise. Just interesting how you sort of organized yourself from the beginning to go out and sell to larger enterprise.
Yeah, and I think big machines, and it was a long learning process. And I think also what I would caution everyone, and I think what Andy, from selling enterprise, it does take a long time. And I think that's the biggest challenge for a startup. Oftentimes, even if you do everything perfectly, it might be a 2-year sales cycle, until you get an account like a GE or an IBM. And I think it took me a few years to kind of figure out why. And it's really not even about, I think you can pretty quickly get someone, let's say at IBM or GE, excited about your product, but then all the internal, consensus they have to build with IT, with legal, with security, with budgeting process, until they can actually make the purchase and get your product deployed, it just takes, at a minimum, I think it takes, many months, and worst case, it takes many years. So I think as a startup, you have to choose it at the right time. Either you have to have the funding, you can live through that, or I think what we certainly did at G2 Crowd, or even my last company, Steelbrick, that's not part of Salesforce. At Steelbrick, for example, we did start out selling more mid-market, but then and what I've learned is you really need different teams to sell to them, because I think an enterprise sales rep, it's a different cadence and probably a different person. They do need to be more experienced, and I think and probably be a little bit older, because to have that comfort to have conversations with executives at companies like IBM and GE, you just need some gravitas that, frankly, I think you're just not going to have straight out of college. And I think it's also, you have to have different quotas even, and different expectations. And at G2 Crowd now, for example, we have an SMB, or we call it growth sales team, that targets companies with employees of 1 to 50. And obviously they're talking to an entrepreneur who can make a decision in one call. So it's just a quick inside sale, give me some more information, and if I like it, I'll buy. And on the opposite end, now we have an enterprise sales team, and that starts for us at 1,000 employees. And they really, there we also know when we hire a new enterprise rep, hey, for the first 2 quarters, they're probably not going to sell much of anything. And it's really only going to be by their 4th quarter where they're productive. And so we give them the time, and their job is really much different. And, and we are proud at G2 Crowd, for example, IBM did just become a significant customer. But, but the sales rep working at Alex, he spent a couple of years building the relationship, getting to know all the people at IBM, and aligning with their plans and budgets for the next year. And so it's just a very different process. And I saw the same thing at Salesforce. In Salesforce now, while I was there, they segment their sales teams in about 10 different layers, going all the way from SMB, which is, companies 1 to 10 employees, right, going all the way to their truly Fortune 500 true enterprise. And I think if you have the same salesperson trying to do both, odds are they're going to fail, because I think to be good at the SMB sales, you have to be very transactional. You have to be on the phone making hundreds of phone calls, trying to close every call. In the enterprise, it's kind of the opposite, where if you try to close them on the first call, they're probably going to laugh at you. And so you have to be prepared to build those relationships. But I think you have to have 2 different jobs and 2 different teams. And as a startup, as an entrepreneur, obviously you have to have the financial strength, and be able to survive those long enterprise sales cycles before you start going after them.
Yeah, long sales cycles, and also sort of greater uncertainty about whether win or not. It tends to be a little more binary, I guess, as big
True.
Deals. So
they're hard to forecast, right? You never know. Like any one deal, and then the only way around that, you need a large portfolio of enterprise deals, right? So you need a team doing them, but they're
you're not going
to they're more uncertain.
Yeah, you're not going to have 5x pipeline coverage on really large deals.
No.
Not like you want a more transactional business. The interesting thing about hiring different people. So I think this is the thing that's really hard for entrepreneurs, not necessarily in the startup, but again, in let's say a $5 million company, been in business for 5-10 years, looking to step up, is it's hard for the CEO to say, I'm going to invest in somebody who's going to take 6 months to a year or 2 years to really become productive, because they see that money coming right out of their pocket. What sort of advice could you give them about making that investment, being patient?
Yeah, I know it's hard. And frankly, what's also hard is to find an enterprise sales executive that can succeed with that entrepreneur. He had a $5 million company. I think oftentimes, and I had this experience at Big Machines, the first, frankly, 3 heads of sales I tried to hire were not successful. And a lot of that was also on me. Frankly, I think I hired them too early, before we truly had product market fit. But, but I hired people that came from big companies. And then I think what's also hard, let's say you hire somebody from Oracle or from Salesforce, one thing they tend to also not recognize is how much the brand that's behind them and the strength of the resources of a company like that helps them sell to an enterprise. So all of a sudden, and Matt Gorniak, my head of sales at Big Machines and Steelbrick, what he always said, I think the challenge with your startup is, you call them, you're like, hi, it's Matt from Steelbrick. And they're like, who? Who are you? Steel what? And so the amount of work you have to do to build credibility, build relationships is, probably 5 or 10 times greater than if you call him, hey, this is Matt from Salesforce, and he's still at Salesforce, what he can do today. Right away, they're like, oh, I've heard of you, Mark Benioff's brilliant, and they'll engage with you right away. You'll still have a long sales cycle. So I think finding someone that does have that experience, that has a gravitas, but that can operate in a startup environment. So I think you really also have to have people that love being the underdog. And probably the ideal hire has seen that before. They've been part of a large enterprise, but they've also been at a startup. So they have a recognition for how much harder it's going to be in a startup. But some people love it, and they love being the underdog and kind of being the, kind of the scrappy underdog. And I love that as an entrepreneur. Otherwise, why start a company, right? Because at the beginning, you are a massive underdog. But some people feed on that. And I think finding enterprise sales executives that feed on that energy, that love being the underdog, that want to be that breakthrough, be the guy in the company that does the first $1 million deal. But you have to find people that have that energy. And I think it does require a higher level of energy and commitment and that they do love being the underdog and they want to make the breakthrough. And I think it is just even much harder than when you're selling for an established brand.
Yeah, I think another mistake that I've seen that the entrepreneurs make is in that first hire, in place of the energy, they think they can hire the Rolodex. If people understand the Rolodex, the list of contacts. And yeah, I've rarely ever seen that work out.
True. And I think the reality of that is, let's say, and I worked at Salesforce, or my first company got bought by Oracle. But the reality is, the Oracle customer, they're not buying really from that sales rep, right? They're buying the Oracle brand. And so, just because that salesperson sold someone while they were at Oracle doesn't mean that that customer is going to buy from that individual again, right? And so I do think kind of in some ways the Rolodex is dead, or just having a list of contacts, because we can all get that now with LinkedIn, right? It's easy to figure out who to call.
Yep.
The hard part is breaking through that noise because that person is getting hundreds of pings. So how do you break through that?
All right. You started Big Machines back in roughly 2000 and we're growing that. So what you've seen as sort of the differences between growing Big Machines sort of 15 years ago versus growing G2 Crowd now? Well,
I do think, all in all, I do think it's easier now. I think all the technology and there are these big drivers. Certainly right now the cloud is a massive driver where all enterprises are trying to go to the cloud. And frankly, also there's a massive arms race between Amazon and AWS and Google's cloud and Microsoft Azure and now Oracle trying to get in the game. So there are just these greater trends of companies wanting to and needing to buy technology. And so I think all in all, there's just more momentum for our whole industry. And, and I think on the flip side, like I said, I think what is harder, there are just thousands more companies out there selling SaaS products, cloud products. So, breaking through that noise is, I think, harder for most. But I think we're now also benefiting doing it the third time and having credibility with investors and employees and customers. I think we do have the ability to break through that noise. And there are all these great technologies, and we do really try to be best practice users ourselves. Obviously, we use Salesforce for our CRM. We use Intact, which is now part of Sage, for our financials. But we also use probably 20 or 30 different sales and marketing applications to make our sales and marketing process easier and better. And I do think by taking advantage of those technologies, it's much easier to scale. I think we're scaling our sales team. Probably a year ago, maybe we had 10 sellers. I think soon we'll have 40 quota carriers.
Right.
And I think using these technologies, we can get them to be more productive more quickly. And of course, so what I mentioned at the beginning, it's also important we don't just get reliant on digital technology, and we still build a authentic human relationships with our customers. But all in all, I think if you use the technologies in the right, smart way and the overall momentum of our industry moving towards the cloud and people now doing AI and mobile technologies and businesses are just so hungry for technologies to help them get better in their own business. So I think, in that sense, it is a good environment to be selling in. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, I look at some of these tools and think back to when I was first starting my career and bag carrying salesperson that, I could have really used some. You could have used some of those things. Yeah, it would have made a huge difference, especially working some of the large accounts. And anyway, yeah. All right.
So you probably remember the same thing back in 2000, where just figuring out who to call was really hard.
Well, I tell people,
now you go to LinkedIn and you can find just about anybody within a few seconds.
Yeah, I was telling somebody yesterday, back in the late 80s when I just started doing large-scale international sales with multi-million-dollar communication systems, working for a startup. I was cold calling companies in Europe and Asia. I mean, there was no internet. How do you find a point of contact?
Right. Yeah. And back then, the Rolodex did have value, right? Because at least if you had the Rolodex from your last company, at least you knew who to call, right? And other people didn't know who to call. But I think today, it was
a point of entry, but it
yes,
that was about it. Yeah, you still had to go form the relationship with the people that were really involved with it. And the point you made earlier, it was a human to human business. All right. Well, Godard, thank you very much. Tell folks how they can find out more about G2 Crowd or connect with you.
Yeah, so I think, learn more about G2 Crowd. You just go to g2crowd.com, and it is a great resource for free that hopefully you all will find helpful in picking the right business software. And I think if you want to connect with me, I think LinkedIn is a great way to do it. And I am very open to what I would call random networking. So, I think if you ping me on LinkedIn, and I would just say make the message authentic and personalized, then we can get connected that way.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you very much for participating in the show today. And friends, thank you for spending this time with me today. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule. So until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone.